Xi Jinping is set for an unprecedented third term as China's president and the leader of the country's Communist Party. But will we see a shakeup at the top that consolidates Xi's power? And how will that change the direction of China's future? I'm Jafar Hasnan, and today's newsmaker is China's Communist Party Congress. Xi Jinping may be the man at the top, but he's backed by a number of officials who help him rule the whole of China. And that group of men and women will be selected next week when 2,300 party delegates gather in Beijing for their 20th National Congress.
Xi Jinping's thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era has become ever more influential worldwide. While our party's international circle of friends has kept expanding, with historic changes taking place in its relationship with the world. Over the decades, we have persevered in telling the stories of the Communist Party of China profoundly, thoroughly, and comprehensively in a creative and innovative way.
But like much of Chinese politics, the process is complicated and opaque. The delegates will select a new central committee. That committee will then pick Xi's political bureau and his standing committee, which is his closest circle of advisors. Where they take the country in the next 5 years is anybody's guess, but that guess is important. China's influence continues to grow in every corner of the globe. And in the near future, the country is expected to pass the United States by as the world's biggest economy. And joining me now to discuss what's happening in Beijing next week is Victor Gao. He's a former Chinese diplomat and a professor at Soochow University. And in Tokyo, we have Lim Tai Wei, a research fellow at the National University of Singapore East Asian Institute. Thanks very much for joining us here on The Newsmakers. Now, according to many, this is going to be one of the most closely watched political gatherings in China in the past few decades, primarily because it comes at a time when China is facing a host of domestic and geopolitical challenges. So, Victor, let me begin with you here. This is the 20th Party Congress, and one that would most certainly see President Xi secure an unprecedented third term in office. Tell me, how do you think this Congress differs from the previous ones?
Well, first of all, this 20th Party Congress will take place at a time when China definitely is already the second largest economy in the world by official exchange rate benchmark, and is already the largest economy if we use purchasing power parity. China, after 43 years of reform and opening to the outside world, has become the largest manufacturing country in the world, and its industrial output is larger than the combined total amount of the United States, Germany, and Japan. This is truly unprecedented. So I think the background for China is not the difficulties it's facing in its domestic economic development or the mounting geopolitical challenges abroad caused mostly by the United States. It's the ever-expanding Chinese influence on the global stage and the ever-narrowing gap between China and the United States in terms of the overall size of their economy, and the trust and the belief in China that tomorrow will be better than today, and no force in the world can stop China's peaceful rise in the coming years and in the coming decades. This is the most important difference of this 20th Party Congress compared with all the other previous party congresses, because China today is very much of an important member of the international community and is taking on more and more important and influential roles on the global stage.
Victor, at the same time, we are also going to witness, almost certainly going to witness something unprecedented. That is President Xi securing a third term in office. Tell me, what does it indicate about his time in office? Does it tell us that President Xi is widely praised within his party, or perhaps does it tell us that it's a move to consolidate more power?
President Xi Jinping has been the paramount leader of China for the past 10 years, and the widely expected third term of his leadership of China and the party and the military is a strong acknowledgement of the trust that the party and the whole Chinese nation have placed in him, because China need a leader like him, very powerful, very confident, very much eager to step up to the plate in terms of defending China's sovereignty and national interest and territorial integrity, and also refuse to kowtow to any power in the world which wants to manhandle China. I would say this is exactly the type of leader that China needs at this particular point in history, and his leadership of China over the next 5 years hopefully will again turn out to be a very successful 5 year for the Communist Party of China as well as China as a country.
Right, and while the General Secretary of the party is going to most certainly remain the same, we are expecting changes in the Political Bureau and the Standing Committee. So talking about the Standing Committee and the Political Bureau, Lim, what do you think the future holds for China? How do you think, how would the future of China change depending on who these people are in the Standing Committee and the Political Bureau?
Well, one of the reasons why President Xi is seeking president third term is because there is a desire for continuity in some of the macro policies in China. And this continuity in the form of Belt and Road Initiative, the continuity in the form of being able to become a strong nation, and also to achieve greater economic development and eradication of poverty. All these goals are long-term in nature, and therefore there seems to be some desire to strive for continuity. So I think if once President Xi gets the third term, he will put in place some of the loyalists that is found within his party, that follows or aligns with his policy to ensure this continuity. Now,
Okay.
from an external
Lim, if I may
base, a lot of
interject,
people,
if I may interject here now, when you say continuity, do you mean that in terms of policy, there's not going to be any change even when the members of the Standing Committee and the Political Bureau would change?
Yes, many thanks for the question. I was going on to the part about there's a lot of external gazers. They are looking at the candidature for foreign minister as well as the premier. And in these candidates, I think there could possibly be micro, discontinuity based on reformist need, or based on personalities, or based on environmental factors. And it is this kind of tweak and modification to the macro policy that the rest of the world is watching very closely, which candidates would actually, able to be selected for the President Xi's third term. And so there's a lot of speculation which personalities will eventually be selected. And there's also a lot of speculation about what those personalities represent, whether they are reformists, whether they are conservative, whether they are hardliners. And this is up for a lot of analysis by as well as the global observers.
Indeed. Now, Lim, you mentioned the Premier, right? Certainly there has been a lot of speculation about who is going to replace Premier Li, while top-level economic policy in China is largely set by the Political Bureau members. Premier Li has been an official face and leader when it comes to the implementation of China's economic policies, right? So, Victor Gao, who do you think is likely to replace Premier Li?
Well, first of all, Premier Li Keqiang will continue to be China's premier until March 2023. That is the next National People's Congress session in China. Therefore, it will still take quite a few months before the major transition will be made. On the other hand, whoever that will succeed Li Keqiang as the next premier of China will be a member of the Standing Committee of the Politburo. Therefore, at the end of the 20th Party Congress, you will read the official announcement of the lineup of the standing committee members, the Politburo members, as well as the central committee members. And I think that will be the better time to read the tea leaves and figure out which person will be the strongest candidate to replace Mr. Li Keqiang as the next premier for China. Right now, all speculations will not be true until when they are confirmed at the end of the 20th Party Congress.
Okay. Now, Lim, let me come to you. What do you think is going to drive the decisions that are going to be made at the 20th Party Congress? Is it going to be the ideology of the party or perhaps what the country needs right now? What do you think they're going to base their decisions on?
Well, I think the political decisions in China has always been driven by domestic imperatives, and domestic imperatives would include social stability, continued economic development, and also increasingly the attention to environmental integrity as well as sustainable development, and also in the economic sphere, high-tech development that China wishes dominant in, particularly 5G technologies, microchips. Externally, I think the factors that have an impact on China's decision making is probably going to be geopolitics as we navigate an increasingly complex world today with a lot of possible stress points due to the post-pandemic situation or due to geopolitical competition. So I think all the combination of both domestic and external factors would probably bring about an impact response, an impact response from the government and the party as they have to navigate both the wishes of the Chinese people as China transitions into a much economically developed country.
Interesting points there, Lim. Now, Victor, Lim mentioned external factors. Tell me, to what extent do you think China's fraught ties with the US, the ongoing war in Ukraine, are going to influence the decisions that are going to be made in the 20th Party Congress?
Well, first of all, China-US relations are probably the most important and consequential bilateral relations in the world of today. And in recent years, there is plummeting of trust between the two countries, mostly caused by the United States. And it seems that the United States really is becoming more and more insane in trying to hold China down and prevent China's continued economic development. I believe their attempts will fail. China will continue to develop economically, and the economic gap between China and the United States will be further narrowed. And before the end of this decade, the Chinese economy, if we use official exchange rate, will surpass that of the United States. On the other hand, the US mistaken perception that once China becomes larger than the United States, China wants to take over the top dog position from the United States and may even impose its values on the United States is completely misplaced. And I believe they will be proven wrong once China crosses that hurdle to become larger as an economy than the United States. Therefore, how to handle China-US relations will be the most consequential thing in the coming years and in the coming few decades. And I truly believe, whether in the past or at present or in the future, China will be a force for peace, stability, and development, and China sees no fun of becoming the top-ranking superpower or the top dog in the world, because China wants to deal with the rest of the world, all the countries in the world, in equal terms. No matter whether a country is big or small, it will be treated equally, on the par with China. This is the most important international position for China in the coming decades.
Okay. Interesting points. Now, Lim, do you think China is going to change in any way the way it deals with the rest of the world except for the US as part of this party congress?
Well, I think of priority to China would probably be the periphery. its immediate neighborhood. And certainly economically, it is already the largest trading partner with Southeast Asia. It is also a ranking trading partner with other East Asian countries and economies. In Africa, in the African continent, for example, it is also the largest. So in this sense, China is indeed an economic juggernaut. So for many countries that are, rational actors and also focus on economic development, particularly in the post-pandemic recovery period, there's a lot of hope that they can play a role in navigating peace and stability in the competition between the two great superpowers. Indeed, there are some areas, limited they may be, in which the two superpowers are able to possibly and potentially collaborate. And this may include climate change, also, diffusing tensions in the Korean Peninsula, and also developing technologies that are good for the environment, like electric vehicle together. And it is these kind of collaborative platform that in particular East Asian countries, economies within China's immediate neighborhood hopes that the two superpowers is able to find a common ground to diffuse some of the tensions. If not diffuse the tension, at least tune down the temperature so that there can be a greater interdependence between the economies in the region, as well as to prevent accidental conflicts from breaking out. Accidental conflict is something that worries a lot of Asia Pacific, Indo-Pacific countries and economies, something that they do not wish to see, and therefore they are trying their very best through multiple platforms and bilateral channels
Right.
To try to diffuse some of the temperatures.
Now, Lim, I want to pick up on the part where you mentioned the strengths of Chinese economy, but there is no doubt that China's zero COVID policy has taken a toll on its economy, while the zero COVID policy has helped in preventing a lot of deaths and long-term infections. It has had a huge, it has cost the economy, in fact, at a high and growing cost. So, Victor Gao, for how much longer do you think the Chinese leadership can afford to sustain this zero COVID policy?
Well, first of all, from the Chinese perspective, China has the best record in fighting off the COVID-19 pandemic in terms of the lowest number of deaths suffered for the Chinese population and also the lowest number of infections incurred by the Chinese population as a whole. In a sense, over the past almost 3 years, the total cost to the Chinese economy has also been very low because China has developed a very, very effective, efficient system of identifying infections, tracing the contaminated areas, for example, and try to institute quarantine and vaccine treatment, you name it. So this is truly an unprecedented nationwide system, which has been very successful in China. Yes, indeed, this system has caused a lot of inconveniences. For example, I have experienced lots of these inconveniences, but I would say the majority of the people in China fully realize that the purpose of all these inconveniences
But
is to
Victor
make
Gao, if I may,
sure.
don't you think the frustration of the people is on the rise? I mean, they have been living under lockdowns for more than 2 years now. So don't you think that as part of this 20th Party Congress, the Chinese leadership is indeed going to come up with some decisions to see how they can solve this issue?
Yes, of course. I personally hope the quarantine periods, for example, can be further reduced and China can really be more scientific in identifying the people or groups of people who have been infected and try to do their best to cure them and bring them back to health. And I would say China would use less and less these large scale quarantine measures, which definitely have created a lot of inconveniences for the people. Now, you mentioned the economic cost. I would say China has been pursuing the zero COVID policy, fully recognizing the economic cost. But China has made a value judgment and made a very important choice. That is to make sure that less people die because of infections and less people get infected because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is a choice made deliberately by the Chinese Communist Party, as well as the Chinese government and the Chinese society at large, because we put a premium on human lives. We want to save more people and prevent more people from getting infections. In that sense, every country in the world should be
Okay.
justified using its own way to deal with the pandemic, and China has apparently
Okay.
embarked upon a very unique Chinese way of dealing with this pandemic.
Okay, now I want to broaden the discussion and talk about the implications of this party congress on the rest of the world. Certainly, what happens in China has implications beyond, right? So, I mean, China is a country which has investments and development projects in almost every corner of the world right now. So, Lim, what kind of impact or perhaps effect do you think this Congress is going to have on countries where China has vested interests and investments in?
Well, the Congress has become a sort of a turning point, or at least a milestone in the development of China, and also the tenure that President Xi has Communist Party, and therefore, President Xi's most important foreign economic diplomatic initiative is the Belt and Road Initiative, formerly known as One Belt One Road, and it is this initiative that many in the region are looking at with regard to continuity, with regards to expansion, with regard to post-pandemic development. For example, the PAN high-speed rail (HSR) project that will run through most of the overland continental Southeast Asian. So many countries are looking at the continuity and sustainability of the project,
Okay.
and also other parts of, I'm sure other parts of the world in the other regions likewise are also looking.
Okay, now, Victor Gao, let me come to you. Certainly, Americans and Europeans who are watching this right now will most likely be cringing by seeing a one-party rule in the most populous country on the planet. So, Victor, I want to give you this opportunity to explain to our audience who live in democratic countries why the system in China is a viable alternative to their way of life.
Well, first of all, philosophically speaking, I think every country in the world has the right to choose and use the political system of their own choice. And no foreign country has any justification to impose its system onto any other country. China is doing things in its own way. And I think in China, we call it socialism with Chinese characteristics, which actually embodies a high level of democracy with Chinese characteristics. To say that China has no democracy is completely confounding the truth with falsehood, because how can you expect a country is so efficient, so productive, and is becoming the largest trading partner with more than 130 countries in the world, which does not work in a democratic way without protecting the human rights, for example, of its citizens. So I think the rest of the world really need to see what China is coming from and how the Chinese system works. Whatever it works, the Chinese system is uniquely suited for the Chinese circumstances. And in China, we do not want to export this Chinese system to anyone else, because we truly believe all the other countries are entitled to their own way of doing business. And the key in the world of today is to treat each other equally and with friendship and goodwill, rather than lecturing others without justification and trying to impose your view onto the other countries. In this sense, China is a force for peace, stability, and development. It has been so for the last 4 decades or so, and I hope it will continue to be so in the future generations.
Okay, fair enough, Victor. Now, this is going to be my last question of the show. Lim, do you think 5 years from now, we will be talking about a fourth Xi Jinping term?
Well, that's a very, very complex question because many cannot have access to the Chinese leadership system. I think what external countries, external China in its periphery, in the region, what many regional countries are probably looking at would be, good governance as well as international norms.
All right, Lim Tai Wei and Victor Gao, thanks very much for talking to us here on the Newsmakers, and thank you for watching. You can follow us on Twitter and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Jafar Hasnan. See you next time.